All right, folks, grab your popcorn because the meltdown is in full swing, and it is glorious. We live in a time where the same people who call Trump a threat to democracy want to cancel elections every time they lose one. The same media that spent years shrieking about misinformation is now running cover for a party that thinks math is racist, borders are imaginary, and the FBI should be the DNC's personal hit squad. But don't worry, folks. CNN has their priorities straight. They're absolutely losing it over a 19-year-old Elon staffer named Big Balls. Yes, that's his real name. And no, it's not a medical emergency. It's just the state of the media in 2024. Grown adults having a full-blown breakdown over a teenager who isn't parroting their nonsense.
Yes, so this is a 19-year-old high school graduate who has used the unfortunate nickname Big Balls online, so that would be one way that we could refer to him. He is now working at Musk's behest inside Doge, and we looked into his background, and so we found, several notable things, Aaron, one of which is that this individual has founded multiple companies, including one with another unfortunate name, Tesla.Sexy LLC, which he established in 2021. He would have been around 16 years old. Now, this LLC controls dozens of web domains.
Oh, this is just too good. CNN has officially hit rock bottom, and instead of climbing out, they've decided to start digging. The latest national emergency, a 19-year-old Doge staffer with the nickname Big Balls. That's it. That's the story. Somewhere in an air-conditioned newsroom, a team of overpaid, underemployed journalists sat down, cracked their knuckles, and decided that a teenager's online alias was the latest existential threat to democracy. Now, first off, let's talk about framing. Notice how CNN immediately paints this kid as some kind of shady operator working at Musk's behest, as if Elon Musk, a billionaire running multiple companies, personally handpicked a teenager for some covert operation inside Doge. That's not journalism. That's fan fiction with a press badge. They're tossing out ominous language like, "We looked into his background," a classic appeal to authority, hoping the audience doesn't realize that what follows is a whole lot of nothing. And what exactly did this groundbreaking investigation uncover? That a 16-year-old registered an LLC, stopped the presses, a high schooler started a company? Something we're usually told is a good thing. Entrepreneurship, ambition, the American dream, except now, of course, because it's tied to someone remotely adjacent to Trump or Elon Musk. Thus, it's being treated like a sinister plot. Oh, and the biggest scandal? The name of the LLC was Tesla.Sexy. Scandalous. Somebody call The Hague. This entire segment is a rhetorical drive-by designed to make the audience feel like something shady is going on without actually saying anything of substance. It's a textbook example of guilt by association. Musk is controversial. Doge is tied to Musk. This kid works for Doge. Therefore, he must be involved in some kind of government conspiracy. No actual evidence, no wrongdoing, just a desperate attempt to manufacture a smear out of thin air. And let's address the obvious hypocrisy here. If this were a 19-year-old progressive activist, CNN would be singing a very different tune. Imagine if he were some gender studies major running a TikTok campaign for climate justice. Suddenly, this would be a brilliant young mind using the power of technology to reshape the world. But because he's not pushing their agenda, he's a dangerous operative. Ultimately, this panel of Karens accomplished nothing short of embarrassing themselves on national television by proving they have zero sense of humor and even less self-awareness. They just sat there stone-faced and seething, dissecting a teenager's dumb jokes, like a group of suburban moms trying to get a high schooler expelled for making a "that's what she said" joke in math class. These are the same people who cheer on Drag Queen Story Hour and tell us to lighten up when their side pushes overtly sexualized content on kids. But the second a 16-year-old names an LLC, Tesla.Sexy, they turn into a pearl-clutching church committee from the 1950s. It's beyond parody. These people aren't journalists. They're just hall monitors and business casual.
In the private information about maybe hundreds of millions of American citizens as young as 19, the big balls here that Katie's talking about, most of them are in their early 20s. There's an exception I'm going to get to in a minute. I'm curious, though, Kara, how well does even Musk know these young men, do you think?
I have no idea.
CNN's Karen panel is in full meltdown mode and not even a single smile in sight. 3 women sitting there with the emotional range of a DMV line acting like a 16-year-old's online alias is a national security crisis. You'd think the kid hacked the Pentagon instead of just having a dumb nickname on the internet. And then we get this hard-hitting journalism. How well does Elon Musk even know these young men? Oh, fantastic question, CNN. Truly groundbreaking. But the best part? The dead serious delivery. Like they're uncovering Watergate 2.0 instead of whining about a high schooler's screen name. It's peak Karen energy, sanctimonious, humorless, and deeply obsessed with something no normal person actually cares about. These are the same people who tell you to lighten up when kids are being lectured on gender theory in kindergarten. But a teenager calling himself big balls online, that's where they draw the line. If this is what passes for investigative journalism now, no wonder CNN's ratings are lower than Biden's approval numbers. Next up, we have Democrat Ayanna Pressley pulling the race card because what else does she do? Seriously. I'm not even being facetious. Somebody tell me. I want to know. I've never seen her do anything but that. I'm curious. Just genuine question. Okay, I'll let you watch the clip. I'll stop.
Like Iowa. Governor Reynolds, let's learn more about the state. Do you know what percentage of Iowans are white and what percentage are black?
I don't know the exact percentages, no. We're by far a larger percentage of white population.
That's correct. Iowa is 90% white and only 4.5% black. So that is drastically different from the national population. So when Republicans suggest Iowa should be a national model, they're advocating for a government that doesn't reflect our country.
Here we go again. Democrats playing their favorite game. Diversity or democracy? Turns out if a state is too white, it's illegitimate as a model for the rest of the country. That's the latest, brightest insight from Ayanna Pressley, who seems to believe that math itself is a form of systemic oppression. Apparently, if a place doesn't have enough color, it's automatically unworthy of governance. Not bad policy, not economic failure, not corruption, just too many white people. At this rate, she's 5 minutes away from declaring Vermont a hate crime. First, we have the loaded question tactic, where Representative Pressley ambushes Governor Reynolds with an on-the-spot pop quiz on Iowa's racial demographics. Notice how Pressley pounces, not to discuss any actual policy failure, but instead to launch into her pre-written TED Talk on why white people existing in large numbers is problematic. Someone should probably tell her that the Electoral College doesn't hand out diversity points like a woke HR department. Oh yeah, those are gone now, so that won't even make sense in a year. Then comes the stunning insight. Iowa is 90% white. And what exactly is the implication here? That white people, by virtue of existing, somehow create an inferior government? That a state can't function properly unless Pressley personally approves of the racial breakdown? This is racial essentialism dressed up as a progressive thought. Imagine a Republican saying a majority black state shouldn't be a national model. MSNBC would be live streaming the meltdown. And then, of course, comes the false equivalence. Pressley argues that Iowa can't be a model because it doesn't perfectly reflect America's overall demographics. By that logic, we should throw out every state as a model. Should we disqualify California because it's overrun with fentanyl addicts and trust fund Marxists? Should New York be tossed out because it has the same crime rates as a third world country? Or are we only applying this standard to states that don't vote Democrat? But here's where it gets fun. Iowa, for all its supposed racial deficiencies, actually works. It ranks in the top 10 states for high school graduation rates, outperforming liberal utopias like California and New York. According to the National Center for Education Statistics, it also has a lower poverty rate than the national average and fewer people on welfare per capita than blue state train wrecks like Illinois, according to the U.S. Census Bureau data. So what exactly is the problem with Iowa's model? That it doesn't need a bloated welfare state to function? That it doesn't rely on race baiting to win elections? And here's the kicker. Trump didn't just win Iowa. He curb-stomped Biden by 13 points, according to official results from the Iowa Secretary of State. And that's why Pressley and her crew suddenly decided demographics matter. Democrats don't lose elections. They're stolen by racist demographics and structural oppression. They ran the same tired script in 2016, shrieking about white lash, as if blue-collar workers voting in their own interests was some kind of a Klan rally. And let's not forget the media misinformation campaign. Remember when the geniuses in the press spent months telling us Iowa was in play for Biden? When poll after poll breathlessly claimed Trump was in trouble, then Election Day rolled around and Iowa slapped Biden so hard he forgot which state he was in again. According to the Des Moines Register, Democrats tanked in the state not because of racism, but because their economic policies were crafted by people who think pronouns and climate anxiety are bigger priorities than jobs and inflation. Turns out the working class doesn't like being lectured by coastal elites whose biggest struggle is remembering their DoorDash password. Now look, at this point, it's evident that none of this is about Iowa's policy. It's about power. Pressley and the Democrats are preemptively discrediting any red state that succeeds. If they can't win on policy, they'll just declare the entire system illegitimate. If Republicans win, it's because of white supremacy. If a Democrat loses, it's because of voter suppression. If a progressive can't explain why their ideas keep flopping, it's because reality itself is bigoted. This is the political equivalent of a toddler throwing a tantrum in the cereal aisle, except instead of demanding Fruit Loops, they're demanding that Iowa apologize for existing. And shifting gears to President Trump, who just signed an executive order to protect religious freedom and put an end to the federal government's anti-Christian weaponization. And just like clockwork, the left is already melting down because in their world, every religion deserves respect except Christianity. We've watched this play out for years. Churches forced to close while strip clubs stayed open, business owners sued into bankruptcy for refusing to violate their beliefs, and activists treating faith like it's some fringe ideology instead of the foundation of this country. But now, Trump is making sure Christians actually get the same protections that everyone else does. Now, this order isn't about giving Christians special treatment. It's about restoring the rights they already should have under the Constitution. No more bureaucrats trying to regulate churches out of existence. No more forced ideological compliance. No more attacks on faith disguised as progress. And if the same people who screech about religious freedom suddenly have a problem with that, it's probably because they never cared about that freedom in the first place. Anyway, President Trump later said this, which tied everything into a nice little bow.
To confront such weaponization and religious persecution, today I'm signing an executive order to make our Attorney General, who's a great person, she's going to be a great Attorney General, Pam Bondi, the head of a task force, brand new, to eradicate anti-Christian bias. About time, right? Anti-Christian bias.
Finally, some actual action against the blatant anti-Christian bias that's been festering in this country for years. For too long, we've watched as faith is openly mocked, churches are targeted, and Christians are treated like second-class citizens in a country that was founded on religious freedom. Meanwhile, every other belief system gets coddled and protected. The left loves to talk about equality and inclusion, but what they really mean is that every religion deserves respect except Christianity. And if you don't believe that, let's look at the actual evidence. First, let's talk about schools. Christian students across the country have been disciplined or outright banned from expressing their faith, while every other worldview gets a free pass. According to the Alliance Defending Freedom, students have faced disciplinary action for openly praying, wearing Christian-themed clothing, and even reading their Bible during free periods. In one case, a 12-year-old in Colorado was kicked out of class for wearing a backpack with a Jesus Loves Me patch, while students sporting political and activist slogans face no consequences. And it's not just students. Christian student groups have been banned from college campuses under the excuse that the faith-based leadership requirements are discriminatory, according to the Beckett Fund for Religious Liberty. Meanwhile, the same universities fund explicitly leftist and religious minority organizations with no issue. Then there's the weaponization of the legal system against Christians. According to the Heritage Foundation, Jack Phillips, the Christian baker from Colorado, has been targeted with 3 separate lawsuits, despite winning at the Supreme Court in 2018. Activists have deliberately sought him out for custom cake orders they knew he would refuse, just to force him into expensive legal battles. And he's not alone. Christian businesses have been sued, fined, and shut down for declining to participate in events that conflict with their beliefs. Meanwhile, businesses across the country routinely deny services for various reasons, whether political, personal, or logistical, without any legal repercussions. But because Phillips's refusal was based on Christian beliefs, he has been subjected to years of financial and legal harassment. And let's not forget government overreach. when it comes to shutting down churches. According to Pew Research, at least 37 states implemented restrictions on religious gatherings during COVID-19, but left secular businesses like liquor stores, casinos, and even abortion clinics open under the guise of being essential. In California, churches faced outright bans on singing, and pastors were threatened with jail time for holding services, according to First Liberty Institute. Meanwhile, mass protests and left-wing rallies were not only tolerated, but celebrated. Remember George Floyd? By the same politicians enforcing church shutdowns. A report from the Wall Street Journal found that 85% of religious liberty lawsuits filed during the pandemic were won by churches, proving that the government had no real legal basis for targeting them in the first place. So yeah, this task force is long overdue, and you already know the usual suspects are going to lose their minds over this. The same people who whine about religious persecution when a bakery won't make their custom gender-fluid satanic wedding cake are suddenly going to pretend anti-Christian bias doesn't exist. But we've all seen it. Censorship, lawsuits, government overreach, all aimed at silencing people who refuse to bend the knee to the latest progressive doctrine. This isn't about privilege. It's about stopping an ideological purge. And now, thanks to Trump, Christians finally have someone in their corner willing to fight back.
The element, the everything that's going to be happy. People of religion are going to be happy again. And I really believe you can't be happy without religion, without that belief. I really believe it. I just don't see how you can be. So let's bring religion back. Let's bring God back into our lives. Thank you all very much. Thank you very much. Great honor. Thank you.
Trump just hit the nail on the head. Without faith, there's no real happiness. And honestly, he's right. For years, we've been fed this idea that pushing God out of society somehow makes us more enlightened, more progressive. But look around. Are people happier now? Is a generation drowning in anxiety, depression, and identity crisis really proof that secularism is working, that it's even moderately good? Bringing God back into our lives isn't just about faith. It's about restoring the moral foundation of this country that's been systematically stripped away by cultural Marxists that hate everything about America. Schools, government, culture, all of it has been sanitized of any higher purpose, leaving people spiritually empty and desperate for meaning. And what's replaced it? Endless outrage, empty consumerism, and a culture that rewards victimhood over virtue. Trump gets it. America was built on faith, and the further we drift from it, the worse off we become. It's time to stop pretending that's a coincidence. And to get a sense of just how utterly lost the next generation is, here they are protesting the end of DEI policies.
Look at this diversity. Look at the love. Look at the kindness. That's what we have to stand for. We have to stand for the people standing next to us and the people are standing up, because we cannot allow meritocracy.
This, folks, is the brave new world where meritocracy, aka earning what you deserve based on skill and effort, is now considered a bad thing. This woke protester is proudly declaring that success should be determined by diversity and love, which, let's be real, is just code for handouts based on identity politics. Because why work hard when you can just demand power based on who you are instead of what you can do and how you can contribute to your community? This, folks, is what happens when participation trophies raise an entire generation. They don't want to compete. They want the rules rewritten so they can feel included without actually earning it. The protester says, we cannot allow meritocracy to win, which is one step away from saying we cannot allow competence to exist. And look around. This mentality is everywhere, from jobs to college admissions to entire industries. We're watching standards crumble in real time. But don't worry, I'm sure letting feelings determine success instead of merit will work out great for American society. The reality is, America was built on meritocracy. The entire idea of the American dream is that it doesn't matter who you are, where you come from, if you work hard and prove yourself, you can succeed. Immigrants flocked to this country for that very reason, knowing that in America, you weren't trapped by your circumstances. The alternative is the broken systems of Europe and other socialist experiments, where success is handed out based on quotas, bureaucracy, or political favoritism. But now, the left wants to turn back the clock, replacing hard work with identity-based privileges that strip away any fairness from the system. And let's talk about what actually happens when we abandon meritocracy. We get DEI policies. Time and time again, they've been exposed as nothing more than racially biased social engineering that creates more division, not less. Studies have shown that forcing diversity quotas doesn't improve performance, but instead fosters resentment and lowers morale among employees who feel like their hard work is being devalued. In fact, according to the Harvard Business Review, DEI policies have led to an increase in workplace tensions, making employees more distrustful of each other and less cooperative. Why? Because people know when they're being treated unfairly, and rewarding people based on identity instead of ability destroys the trust that makes businesses and institutions functional. At the end of the day, this isn't about fairness, it's about control. The left wants to tear down meritocracy because it threatens their grip on power. A system where people succeed based on skill means they can't rig the game in favor of their political allies or push their ideology unchecked. And that's why they fear meritocracy, because it exposes the truth. Competence wins, and when you remove it, society crumbles. So look around, folks. Does this look like a thriving society to you? We're more medicated, more anxious, more divided than ever before. America wasn't built to function like this. It was built on faith, on principles that anchored people to something higher than themselves. But strip away God, strip away moral responsibility, and what are we left with? A country obsessed with victimhood, replacing purpose with self-indulgence, and calling it progress. This is what happens when a nation loses its soul, when the very thing that once gave it strength is systematically erased. And the people doing the erasing, they don't want you to notice that the more they push God out, the worse things get. That's why a return to faith isn't just important, it's essential. We're not designed to live in a society where truth is relative, where identity is fluid, but morality is rigidly dictated by whatever ideology is in power. America was founded on the belief that rights come from God, not the government. And yet we've allowed those in power to convince us that faith is backwards, that secularism is enlightening, all while they replace religion with their own godless dogma, one that demands obedience but offers no redemption. Without faith, there's no foundation. Without a moral compass, there's no direction. Without God, there is no America. So the real question is, what happens next? Do we continue down this path, watching our institutions crumble under the weight of their own hypocrisy? Do we let the loudest, most unhinged voices dictate the future of our country? Or do we wake up, recognize what's happening, and reclaim what's ours from the beginning? This isn't just about politics. It's about the kind of world we want to leave behind. The people trying to dismantle faith in America are doing it for a reason, because they know that people grounded in faith, in purpose, in the truth of God cannot be controlled. And that, more than anything, is what they fear the most. Anyway, folks, you tell me what you think in the comments down below. Hope you have a terrific day. Peace.